The Garden Report is powered by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network.
Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to another practice edition of the Garden Report. Noa Dalzell here from Celtics Blog, and we heard from Jayson Tatum for the first time heading into the finals today here at practice, and he talked about lessons from 2022, talked quite a bit about Kyrie Irving as well, which we hit on with Joe Sway yesterday. So we'll get more into the star matchup in these finals, and obviously there's multiple stars on both sides, and Brown and Tatum going against Kyrie and Luka here. But the two MVP candidates, the two guys who are going to be the center of attention, the legacy conversation in this series, obviously, and potentially their first championship as well on both sides here. Luka and Tatum, this series is really going to swing both of their careers in drastically different direction depending on how they play here, depending on who wins. So what's at stake here for these two? What are you expecting from these two going into the series?
I mean, I think they'll both have a really good series. That's my expectation. I think we've seen them both throughout this playoff run struggle, actually, with as far as efficiency goes. And so, this is an opportunity kind of for them to kind of build off of the last round, the last couple of games that have been most effective for them. I think people were sleeping on the fact that for most of this postseason, Luka was really struggling. Like his numbers were worse than Tatum's as far as just shooting numbers, and then obviously turned it around towards the end there. And so they're kind of coming in this in a similar situation where neither of them have done it all before. Both of them are obviously great players. I think across the league, maybe people have more consensus around Luka being like a generational talent than Tatum. And obviously there's questions on his side as far as defense goes. So the things that I'm looking out for is, can Tatum be efficient offensively? If he's able to do that, like if he's shooting 46% or more from the field, I think they're going to be in really good shape, like provided that he just doesn't totally struggle with his shot. And then I think with Luka, it's like, how much can you target him defensively? Because I think so far this playoffs, like he's held up a lot better than people expected, and which kind of goes to show you how much of it is effort and being kind of focused and everything. But if he's not a liability the way that Tyrese Halliburton and Donovan Mitchell and other stars have been that the Celtics have faced so far this playoff run, that's going to be enormous for Dallas. So those are kind of the two things that I'm watching out for.
Yeah, Tatum sounded loose today, sounded pretty fresh. He got a lot of treatment before he came up here. I was down on the floor dunking, joking around with his coaches. And I was looking back yesterday at just how quick the turnaround was 2 years ago. Being in Miami, leaving the arena at like 1:30 in the morning. I came back here at 5:30. And then the next afternoon, we flew from Boston to San Francisco. So obviously a pretty similar turnaround for the team as well. Usually 2-3 days between the end of the East Finals for the Celtics, winning that Game 7, going to their first finals, and then, of course, the media day and some of the things we talked about that are different about the finals here that we'll see, going into this. And certainly this group has a comfort with White, Horford, Tatum, Brown, all those key guys on this team, even Drew Holiday, of course, in 2021, have played in the finals at this point. When you look at Dallas, Kyrie obviously has that experience. This is going to be the first time for Luka, who's obviously played in big games throughout his career, but this is a special kind of stage, a big expectation here for him going into this. So that's a little different for them. Players up and down that roster, same deal. Jason Kidd, of course, won it as a player. As a coach, is any different? This is Joe Mazzulla's first finals as the head coach. He was obviously here for the, assistant role that he was in under Ime Udoka when they were here last. So dealing with that environment's obviously been a big conversation, but when we talk about the two stars specifically, Luka and Tatum, Tatum's been through this. He's struggled through this. He talked a little bit about today how you don't get that extra chance, and he feels fortunate to be in that position here. But the big thing I'm looking at with him is just how he handles the gravity of this moment, right? Like a lot of it's going to be on him. As we talked about a little bit on the pod, I'm sure there's going to be some amount of like him having to play up to what Luka's doing out there and how he handles that, and just the stakes. Like this is another like golden opportunity for him to win this first title. And when you look back at that finals a couple years ago, Curry did what he did, right? He took the MVP. They went out there and won that series. But you also look at the roster they went against and what the Celtics had there, and you're like, ooh. They lost a little bit of an opportunity to go out there and win one. So that was the big theme with Tatum today, is not letting that opportunity slide here.
Yeah, I mean, I think they've all talked about how, upon reflection, like how much of a whirlwind that 2022 run was. Al Horford yesterday called it a roller coaster. I think that's just been a constant theme throughout the season, and particularly the most, last couple of days now that they're going to the finals. And this is not a roller coaster. I mean, this playoff run, he mentioned it. There haven't been long series. Every series, we had 2 5-game series and 1 4-game one. So it's pretty much as quick as you can have a playoff run go to get to the finals. I feel like we've spent this entire playoff run discussing like who the next opponent's going to be, how they're spending the time off. Like it hasn't had that cadence that 2022 had, where it just felt like they were constantly on the brink of elimination, or last postseason run had. And hopefully that's a good thing, and hopefully that kind of puts them in position to feel really confident and comfortable going into the finals and not, running out of steam. You saw that with Anthony Edwards. He talked about running out of steam and how he felt like, just you're not even making it to the finals, but just as a young player, like how he's going to have to change his training and all that. I think Jayson Tatum has been there, and it really impacted him, that feeling of just like running out of gas, because he had a really good playoff run in 2022 until the finals. I think people sometimes forget about that. And so this is an opportunity for them all. Like they're not going to run out of gas. That's not what's going to happen here if things don't go right. That just because they have this, 9-day break, they've been prepared. I think they've had breaks this entire playoff run. There's other questions, obviously, and if Luka puts together one of these kind of crazy hallmark performances, that's going to be really hard to overcome. But I think it'll be more on Dallas's front than the Celtics coming out like flat or retired or anything like that.
Yeah, no, and I know Jack over at Celtics Blog was asking a lot about that today, the layoff and how you handle that. One thing that stands out to me, because they've had them going in each series, is how explosively they've started each game one. Like they've gone on some massive runs to start each one of these series that have just kind of like knocked the other team back off their feet. And obviously Miami came in off the play-in tournament. Cleveland came in off 7 games, same with Indiana. So you faced a team in each of those circumstances that was exhausted, that was playing a lot of minutes and games to get to that point. Not the case with Dallas, right? They're getting a similar time off here.
And they need it, too.
They don't have to fly here until probably Tuesday night. So that's a little bit of a difference there. But these two teams kind of come in evenly in terms of the preparation and the time off coming into the series here. So it will be interesting to see how Luka starts this off. He was hot 10 last series, just blazing out there. He finished that series 43% from 3 on 10 attempts a game, which is just silly. Obviously, we've talked a lot about like how you have to handle a guy who can just stretch the floor and do as much as he's doing out there. So, and we've mentioned it already, Tatum having to play up to that level, because Luka's going to have 35, 12, 12, those kind of games. Joe Mazzulla today, it seemed like he was trying to focus more on not playing to what those guys are doing and more focusing on, again, a lot of the details that have gone into this run, the little things that the Celtics and Tatum have done to be consistent and to build advantages on the opposing team. So you mentioned it in the podcast, and I think it's a good point. There's going to be a lot of expectation on Tatum in this series to match what Luka's doing, to play up to Luka's level, especially if it is a close series and they're losing a game or two early on and it's like a 2-2 series through 4. People are going to say, oh, why isn't Tatum playing like Luka is out there? Why is he getting outplayed by Luka? But it seems like the Celtics approach, especially with what Mazzulla said today, is we're not trying to shut them down. We're not trying to match what those two were doing, because it's not possible. It really isn't.
Yeah. No, I mean, and that's the reality of it, is that, the reason that you don't, there's not a conversation around how do you stop them. It's just how do you force them into the most difficult shots possible. Obviously, you want nothing easy for either of those two. The thing is, I don't think they really need easy shots to get going. I think most stars probably do want to see a few easy ones go through. They're a little bit of an exception. But to me, it's just a question of, how do the other guys match up with their opponents? Because the Celtics do have a clear advantage when you look across the starting lineup in, position by position. Kyrie and Luka is one thing, but the rest of the way, there's a lot more experience and all-star accolades and just a lot going on the Celtics side. And so those are the matchups I think you have to win, and making sure that someone like Luka, who is, obviously is a great scorer, but he's also a great facilitator, and he can get other guys involved, and he can get, he's really been so effective with that this season, particularly, post trade deadline, and getting those guys involved. And so I think those are the things that you really have to try to take away. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. I feel like some of what Mazzulla said today kind of echoed that sentiment. He didn't say it plainly, but he did say, you can't stop them. And Derek White said the same thing. You really can't stop them. Drew Holiday said the same thing. I think there's a consensus around the league that these are two of the most talented players in the game today.
Yeah, and like they did in other series, it feels like the Celtics just want to take away spots on the floor, make the other team the less efficient team, and force them in the shots that as Missoula mentioned, that they can live with there. So does that work against two guys that are comfortable taking mid-rangers to the degree that these two are? We will see. And of course, Porzingis' status, a big factor going into this series as well. We talked about that in our first video. And we'll continue to hit on this Tatum-Luka conversation going forward. How do you guys see that? How important is that going into this series? Obviously, one of the big questions before it gets going here. Luka's just playing out of this world right now. And it might come down to just how many stops those two individually can generate, because Celtics are going to go at Luka. Tatum is going to have to guard Luka and Kyrie at different times in the series, especially as they change matchups like they often do defensively in Boston's case there. So show our sponsors some love. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS for a deposit match up to $100. Daily fantasy sports partner. They're amazing. Go in there. Check out what the projections are going into game one. It's fun. You can see what they're expecting these guys to do. It's often the big scoring totals for Tatum and Brown, but you can find some other guys that have lower expectations that maybe you pick more on, and maybe you feel like Tatum, Luka, they're going to be keyed in on, go less on them. So again, use that code CLNS. And if you want tickets to the finals or any event going on this summer, go to the Game Time app and use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase over there. Of course, terms apply. Plenty more coverage coming next week as we are within 1 week, just 5 days away from game one of the NBA Finals. Are you excited?
I'm very excited. Yeah, I think this is going to be a fun series. I think it was looking like, it could go a lot of different directions, but honestly, I think this matchup makes a lot of sense from so many different perspectives.
Big atmosphere, big stars. It's going to be a lot of fun. Finals talk continues here on CLNS Media, so subscribe to there, as well as Celtics All Access, and stay tuned with us for more NBA Finals coverage going forward. We'll be back here on practice on Monday, I believe. Media Day ahead as well on Wednesday. So for Noa Dalzell, Bobby Manning, this has been a practice edition of the Garden Report. Hey, Bobby Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed our video. So subscribe to our channel for all content. Hit the bell for notifications and subscribe to all of our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS.